I know exactly where you are coming from. You keep trying to build your horse's top line, you are doing your best, you do everything you can to help him lift that back, to move better, look better, and honestly, to give yourself the peace of mind that you are not failing him completely. You tried heel work, transitions, backing up the heel, you rode long and low, you got a new saddle pad, a new massage pad, and then you had a small heart attack when you saw your credit card bill limits hit. So you told yourself that it was for his back, but today we both know that it was also for your nervous system. You tried riding over the poles, you raised them, you lowered them, you rode through cavaletti. At some point, your arena started to look like an equestrian IKEA display. And your phone? Gosh, it holds probably at this time enough screenshots to illustrate an entire My Horse Has a Weak Back encyclopedia. And still, when you stand beside your horse, you see the same hollow area, the same lack of fullness. Under the saddle, the hind legs are moving, the front legs are moving, but the back in between does not truly carry the movement. Your horse moves, but he does not flow. The legs are moving, but the back does not engage. So you do not see that wave, that suppleness, that strength you were once promised. When you try to seed the trot, it feels closer to experiencing a small brain concussion than that mystical oneness you were once promised in the riding school. So if this is oneness, it is probably more you and the saddle traumatically bonding than you and the horse experiencing anything close to that dancing together you were striving for. So naturally you think we need to strengthen the back more, we need new exercises or more of the old ones. But what if the back is not failing because you have not found the right exercise? What if it is failing because every exercise is being carried by the same movement pattern that prevents the top line from functioning and developing properly? And this is the revelation I want to give you today. You cannot build a functional top line by focusing on muscles or even on the exercises alone. You build it by changing the way force travels through the entire horse. The exercise is not the adaptation. The movement pattern inside the exercise is the adaptation. It is the part no one puts in the top 10 top line exercises carousels on Instagram, and yet it is the single one that keeps changing top line of horses of my clients over and over again. And we had some really serious lost cases, absolutely transformed when we stopped focusing on muscles and exercises and started focusing on the change inside the movement pattern the horse is using to move and to travel. Two horses can do the same poles, the same heels, the same transitions. From the outside, both are completing the task the rider or trainer has put in front of them. From the inside, however, one horse came closer to the tendon-based movement pattern, and the other just became more experienced in his muscle-based movement pattern, full, probably, of compensations. Training always produces an adaptation. The body adapts to what it actually does, not to what we have hoped for when we designed the what we do today exercise list for the horse, for our training plan. So the body does not receive the PDF file you created on your phone. It really moves through the system. It is carrying it forward. If the pelvis stays blocked, the back stays shortened and the horse uses the neck to pull himself forward, repeating the exercise does not slowly turn that pattern into correct movement. It simply gives the incorrect pattern more rehearsal time. This is why a horse can be trained a lot and still remain weak, clumsy, and poorly coordinated. He may know the exercises, he may react quickly to your aids, he may know exactly where the pole is and how to put his legs around it, above it, over it. But none of that means that the body has become connected and coordinated. Today I want you to stop seeing the top line as a set of muscles that must be made bigger and start seeing it as the visible result of how the whole horse moves. And I want to show you why the real development of the top line begins in biomechanically correct canter. Not just any movement, not just walk or trot, canter. But not any canter, biomechanically correct canter. I am Anna Marciniak and I am the founder of OneHorseLife and the creator behind conscious relaxation, tendon-based movement, residual tensions, release therapy with the beat, optimal performance program, and Anna's riding method. In my work, I focus on body access, creating the conditions in which both the horse and the rider have the widest possible access to their own bodies so they can influence those bodies effectively and effortlessly. Effortless does not mean lazy. It means we finally stop using tension as a training strategy. This is especially important when we talk about the top line, because the horse cannot correctly use a part of the body he cannot access. So you keep asking for more engagement. You can keep adding the leg, the click from the mouth. You can keep correcting the neck. But if the horse has no access to that pelvis, if he cannot relax within the movement pattern, feel it and allow the pelvis to rotate and transfer the movement through the responsive and available back, then the movement you want is simply not available to the horse. He is not refusing to give you the correct answer. The answer is not available inside his body yet. So the training has to become more intelligent. Instead of asking the horse to perform the final result, we need to create the conditions in which body can discover the moment that produces this result. This is less telling the horse what to ride and more teaching him the alphabet of movement. This is what body access means in practice. The horse becomes aware of the pelvis, he becomes aware of the back, he becomes aware of the neck. He can notice the moment in which tension appears instead of going straight from movement into stiffness, rushing, contraction, and trying to realize that movement through that obstacles of tension compensation, stiffness, and maybe even pain or discomfort. And the same applies to the rider. If you cannot feel that your pelvis is gripping, that your lower back has stopped moving, or that your hands are trying to hold the entire horse together, then you cannot change it. You may have very beautiful intentions, but your body is still influencing the horse through what it is actually doing. This is why I do not separate relaxation from biomechanics. Relaxation within OneHorseLife system is what gives the horse access to biomechanics. And I do not mean a horse who is sleepy, floppy, passive. A relaxed horse is not inactive. It is exactly opposite. When residual tension stop holding the horse's body together, the pelvis becomes more active. It begins to rotate. It can oscillate. It can respond to what the hind legs are doing and to what is happening through the whole body. A blocked pelvis may look very controlled, but it cannot begin the movement we need. It is like a perfect statue, pretty but not going anywhere. And if the pelvis cannot begin the movement, the back cannot receive it. And that is the first connection I want you to see. The top line that does not begin in the top line. It begins in the pelvis, and it starts from its availability for the horse. So let's speak about that internal trampoline. In tendon-based movement, I often described the pelvis as working like a reel. Imagine a reel turning and through that rotation creating tension in the structures connected to it. This is what the pelvis does when the horse starts using his body correctly. As the center of gravity comes down, the body receives that weight, the pelvis rotates, and through that rotation, tension is created in the ligament system going along the spine. The elastic structures are loaded. Then, as the center of gravity moves up again, that stored energy is being released. This is the internal trampoline inside the horse. Not the small plastic one from your childhood, but the serious one that can throw 700 kilograms over a fence. And it is also the easiest way to feel the difference between the muscle-based movement and tendon-based movement. Imagine that you are jumping on a hard floor. Every jump has to be created again and again and again. You land, your muscles absorb the landing, then your muscles have to push you up again. You can do it, but after a few minutes, gravity begins to take the exercise much more seriously than you do. Now imagine jumping the same jumps, but on a trampoline. When you land, the trampoline stretches underneath your weight. It collects energy. Then it releases that stored energy and lifts you up again. You are still using your muscles, you need balance and timing, but you are not longer creating every single jump only through the muscular effort. You are working with an elastic system, and the horse also has such an elastic system inside his body. When he moves through tendon-based movement pattern, the energy from one stride is not simply lost in the ground or dispersed in the body. Part of it is stored in the elastic structures and returned into the next stride. The horse does not have to manufacture every stride from the beginning. This is why truly correct movement feels like less effort and more power instead of more effort, more sweat, same problems. Many people think power should feel like effort. They expect the horse to become tighter, more serious, more muscularly engaged. They expect the rider to work harder too, because apparently suffering together looks more professional. But let me tell you one thing, functional power is not created by making every part of the body work harder separately. It is created when the body parts finally work together. In a muscle-based system movement pattern, the horse creates movement mainly through muscular contraction. One effort follows another, the muscles lift, push, stabilize, and then have to do it all again in the next stride. The body may look active, the legs may look expressive, certain muscles may even become more visible. But visible muscular effort is not the same as functional strength. A horse moving incorrectly is not secretly powerful underneath that problem. He is weak, clumsy, and uncoordinated. He may create big movements, but the body does not know how to transfer them. So the parts are working, but the whole body is not. You can see how important the elastic system is when a horse jumps. A horse can weigh 700 kilograms or more and still lift that body over an obstacle in a fraction of a second. Muscles participate in the jump, but muscular contraction alone cannot explain the speed and power. The body has to collect energy and release it at exactly the right moment. Please watch the whole jumping approach, not just the moment of the takeoff. The horse is already moving, the body carries kinetic energy. Then the front lifts and the weight comes towards the hind legs. As the body comes down, the hind legs received that weight. The muscles support the joints, the pelvis rotates like a reel, and the elastic structures are loaded. Then everything is released dynamically into the jump. This is why horses rarely create their most powerful jump from complete standstill. They use the strides before the obstacle to prepare the system, to condition the system. The approach is part of the jump because it creates the conditions in which energy can be collected. Canter uses the same internal language. The body comes down and goes up. The pelvis rotates. The elastic structures receive force and return it. The horse moves forward not by pushing the entire body through every stride, only with the muscle, but by using the trampoline he has inside himself. When this trampoline is unavailable, the horse may still jump and canter, but everything becomes heavier. The horse has to solve with muscular effort what the elastic system should be helping him to do. So when the rider asks for more forwardness, the horse gives more muscle. The rider asks for more engagement, the horse shortens the body. The rider asks for more elevation, the horse lifts the neck. There is more visible activity, but still no internal connection. It's like watching someone sprint in place, a lot of movement and not a lot of traveling. In tendon-based movement, muscles have a very different role. They are important, but they are not supposed to create every part of the movement alone. They activate the correct movement, they organize the body, and they support the process while the energy is collected in the elastic structures. Then they release it so the force can be transferred through the back. Activation and stiffness are not the same thing. We are not trying to make the back stiff. We want correct activation and then force transfer through the elastic structures of the back. If the muscles keep holding, the back becomes a wall. And a wall can be very strong, but it cannot carry a wave. The horse's back has to be strong enough to receive force and relaxed enough to allow that force to travel. Strong and soft at the same time, like a good yoga teacher, not like a concrete bench. This is why the idea of building the top line by simply asking the horse to hold his back in one position is so problematic. A held back may look lifted for a moment. It may even look impressive in a photograph. But the function of the back is not to remain frozen while four legs move underneath it. The horse moves four legs. The position of the limb changes continuously. The center of gravity raises and falls. The pelvis rotates. The forces entering the body change in every phase of the stride. So the work of the back muscles also has to change in every phase of the stride. They do not just switch on and remain on. At one moment they activate to organize the spine. At another they allow force to pass. And then at the other one they support the body as the elastic structures return energy. This is why the top line muscles are very specific. And this is why the best regular movement for developing them is biomechanically correct canter. But before we arrive at the canter, we have to build the interior road that makes correct canter possible. And let me confess something here. For years, I was working with people who were excellent collectors of exercises, whose heads and hard drives probably looked like museum of Topline in 10 days, ultimate pole patterns, back builder, bootcamp, exercises plans. You name it. If there was a new magic pattern, they have tried it. And at one point, I came to train my student and I looked around and her arena looked like meteor had crashed into a pole factory, honestly. It was so busy and her horses were very polite with her. They were trying their best, but their backs were equally politely unchanged. And that was the day when I decided that it needs to be changed. I have to be more vocal and more, probably even categoric and strong in speaking the truth out to people. That was the day things started to shift, not because I accepted that she wanted to do a new exercise and she just wanted my help to understand how to figure it out with her horse. It is when I finally asked, listen, what is your horse actually practicing inside this exercise? Let's focus on that. And that question took her out of the exercise museum into the real body that her horse needed her to attend. And this is the shift I want for you as well. So let's build that road to the canter. We have to start with the pelvis. We begin with the pelvis. First, the horse has to learn to relax that pelvis. Relax does not mean to switch off. The pelvis becomes more available. It becomes more active, more capable of rotation. Then we need to lengthen the body. The back has to become long. If the back remains short, the ligament system cannot be loaded correctly. There is not enough length through the body to collect and transfer the forces we want to create. And if we do manage to create more force from behind while the back remains short, that force has nowhere useful to go. It reaches the blocked area and changes direction. And you feel it in your hand, you see it in the horse's neck, you feel it under your back when you sit that movement. You see the horse rush, become crooked, hollow, the back loses the rhythm. There is no energy. It disappears. The road through the body is closed. The bill just moved to a different department. This is why a long back matters so much. The back must be long enough to transfer force from behind towards the front and relaxed enough to keep waving while it does that. Think about sending wave through a rope. If the rope is folded or someone grips it tightly, in the middle, the wave does not travel in the same way. You can create more force at one end, but that does not solve that blockage. It only makes the collision in the middle stronger. And this is why your back hurts, your neck hurts, and why so many riders cannot ride more than a few horses a day because they need to take painkillers. This is why also many riders feel when they try to create more engagement in a horse with a blocked back, it feels like the horse starts to bounce more rigidly or harder and not more fluidly. More force is produced, but less of it reaches the front of the horse correctly. And suddenly the rider has much more horse in the hand and much less horse underneath the seat. Then we need the neck. The neck has to remain long and very relaxed. Actually, it has to be very long and even more relaxed. This is where many people become nervous because they learned that before canter the horse should become shorter, more compact, more prepared, and that they need to shorten the neck because this is somehow equivalent of collection. No, it is not. The neck must not become shorter because when the head comes closer to the withers, the body becomes compressing. And yes, it can make an incorrect canter easier. If the horse moves through a muscle-based movement pattern, shortening the body reduces leverage. There is less length to organize, less rotation to control, less body to hold together. The horse can manage the transition through muscular tension. But if we want tendon-based movement, if we want the horse working healthily and correctly until he is in his 20s, then shortening the body removes exactly what the horse needs. The pelvis is creating force from behind. To load the elastic structures along the back, we need length and appropriate counterbalance in front. And the long neck and the weight of the head are part of this system. The horse's neck and head are not an unfortunate design flaw we need to constantly correct when we ride the horse. Instead, they are showing us how the body was built to move. Sometimes people look at the horse with long neck and think the neck should be shorter, the head higher, everything more together. But anatomy is not asking for our aesthetic opinion. It is showing us mechanics. The long, relaxed neck helps the horse organize the forces coming from behind. It allows the front to respond to what the pelvis has started behind. This does not mean throwing the head down or allowing the horse to fall onto the forehand. It means that the neck must remain available. It does not become the place where the rider manufactures a shape, and if your horse's neck feels like modeling clay in your hands, you are probably sculpting and not riding. When the neck is shortened too early, the base of the neck becomes blocked, the back loses length, and the force from the pelvis can no longer travel correctly through the body. The horse may still move forward, he may still canter, he may even look more together, but the top-line building mechanism has been removed from the movement. Now we can finally understand why exercises alone do not solve the problem. So let's move to another chapter, exercise versus movement pattern. So let's start with the pole work. Pole work can be useful, but a pole does not decide which movement pattern the horse uses to cross it. The horse can approach the pole with a relaxed rotating pelvis, a long back and a long relaxed neck. The legs can lift, the force enters the body, and the movement continues through the whole horse. Or the horse can shorten the neck, fix the back, and lift each leg separately, just enough to avoid stepping on the pole. Both horses crossed it, you see? But only one used the exercise to improve the function of the top line. And the same actually applies to heel work. The same applies to transitions. The same applies to backing up the heel. You name the exercise, but the name of the exercise tells you almost nothing about what the body is actually learning. You have to look at the movement pattern inside it. This is the difference between a trainer who collects exercises and a trainer who develops an athlete, turns a horse into an athlete. A professional has to see more than just completion. She has to see where the movement begins, whether the pelvis is available for the horse, whether the back is receiving the force, and whether the neck stays connected to the whole process. Otherwise, we risk making the horse more athletic inside his compensation, so we risk making compensation stronger. A horse, any horse, can become very practiced at repeating a compensation, but he does not become truly powerful or coordinated through it. He remains functionally weak, clumsy, disconnected, because his body parts still do not organize into one movement system. Or maybe your horse responds differently. Maybe he gives you appearance of strength, appearance of coordination. Maybe even your horse is very well bred, very talented, and he still jumps expressively. He still looks impressive from the ground. But when you take that saddle off, when you go through the vet checkup or when the physio comes to visit you, you feel ashamed. Because when you look at your horse's top line, that dropped top line, that under-muscled back, you know that something is not correct. And here we have to say something important. Training does not equal bettering. Habit is not the same as coordination. If it were, we would be Olympic athletes just from walking to the fridge. You can become very efficient at riding bicycle while lightly holding the brakes. You can build impressive legs doing it too. But you are still wasting energy every meter. The same thing happens in the horse. When the body cannot store and return energy correctly, every stride becomes very expensive. The horse has to keep up producing new muscular effort. Some muscles become overloaded, other areas remain disconnected. The horse may be busy, but he's not truly powerful. This also explains something that often looks like a miracle. Sometimes the top line changes visibly after just a few correct sessions in the walk. And I see it over and over again for the students of our week back program and for my own horses that were brought to me with a very poor back. And then we started this program and their top line actually exploded, like pumped up so enormously. I was accused of cheating on social media. Of course, you cannot grow new muscles in 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours. But what changed was the state in which the existing muscles were working. Muscles that were chronically contracted began to decontract. They became better nourished, better oxygenated, hydrated better. The back therefore started to look softer. It started to look fuller. The hollowness became less visible. And this is not yet the real building of the new muscle system. This is the first sign that the body is beginning to use what it already has in a healthier way. When you compare photographs after a good session, you may see a back that looks rounder and more filled. That does not mean you should immediately celebrate 1 hour of record-breaking muscle growth. It means the tension pattern changed enough for the existing tissue to appear and function differently. That is already very important. The horse who could not release the back is beginning to allow movement into it. But now that access has to be repeated, preserved, and eventually challenged with bigger forces. Otherwise, the body can return to the old contraction as soon as the work becomes more difficult. So you cannot correctly develop a muscle that remains chronically contracted and disconnected from the movement pattern. So first, the muscle has to return to its correct working length. First, the back has to become available. And first, the horse has to regain access to the body. And then we can begin to build on that. And this is why progression matters so much. We begin the walk, we begin at the walk, and we begin from the walk because the forces are smaller and the horse has more time to feel, to access, to become conscious of the tensions he is holding. He can feel the pelvis, he can notice when the body shortens, he can learn to keep the neck long without losing himself or falling forward or falling apart. The trainer can see where the movement stops and can help the horse to return to relaxation before increasing difficulty. In walk, we are not trying to make the horse look spectacular. We are teaching the internal trampoline how to switch on. It is the installing the new software phase, not the showing of the up phase. The pelvis begins to rotate, the back becomes long, the neck remains relaxed. The horse starts to use the elastic structures instead of creating every step only through muscular effort. Then and only then we move into trot. Trot makes the forces bigger and the timing faster. The horse has less time to organize each moment, so we have to preserve everything we created at the walk. The pelvis must remain available. The back must remain long. The neck must remain long and relaxed. The horse must remain aware of his body. Trot often fools people because it can look elastic even when the whole horse is not using tendon-based movement pattern. The legs can bounce. Yes, they can to some extent. The feet can leave the ground. The horse can show a lot of expression, but meanwhile, look at the rider's comfort in the saddle. Look at the horse's back. Look how much the withers are elevating upwards with each stride. The back can look as if it is active but not being invited to participate, just basing off that bounce produced by the legs. But the elastic legs are never enough. They will not lead to correct muscular development of the back, and therefore it's always the take of the saddle test that tells the truth. The movement has to travel through the whole body. When this begins to happen, walk and trot already change the appearance of the top line so much. The muscles decontract. The tissues look healthier and fuller. The rider begins to feel more back underneath the saddle, more trampoline. But guess what? Riders don't like it because it makes them look less elegant in the saddle, less stable, less poised. But this is correct movement. Everything is alive. Everything becomes more mobile. The walk and the trot are still preparation, although they already awakened the back. The real development, however, begins when this movement pattern enters biomechanically correct canter. So let's go forward. Let's discuss how biomechanically correct canter really starts. Canter brings together everything the top line has to do in its most complete form. So the pelvis rotates, the center of gravity falls and rises, the elastic structures are loaded and then release energy very dynamically. The back receives a much larger force and has to transfer it forwards to the front. The neck and the head have to balance that force without taking over the movement. This is why not every canter builds the top line. Most horses have learned to canter somehow. They may speed up before the transition, they fall into the transition, they may jump into it, they may lift the head, shorten the neck, contract the back and use momentum to carry the body into that gait. Technically, yes, the horse is cantering, but functionally the canter has almost nothing to do with the movement you are looking for. This is why I teach canter from a very low energy, and this is why at the beginning of rehabilitation process sometimes we allow horses to periodically and in controlled setup disunite canter a little bit, but I explain it deeper in the webinar Relax That Pelvis. When the horse cannot hide behind speed, we can clearly see what really begins the movement. Does the pelvis rotate first or does the head go up first? That simple observation tells you so much. In biomechanically correct canter, the pelvis begins the movement. Its rotation creates the force that travels through the long, relaxed back. And that movement reaches the front of the horse, the front lifts and the neck then responds. The neck does not lift the front. The front is lifted by the movement arriving from behind. The order really matters. If the head and neck go up first, the horse is trying to manufacture elevation from the front. The shape may look higher, but the force did not travel through the body as we wanted it to and as it correctly should. If the pelvis rotates first, the lifting of the front is the consequence of the whole movement system working. The pelvis starts it, the back carries it, the neck balances it. Once you see this, you cannot unsee it. You stop being impressed simply because the horse entered canter. You begin to look at how the canter has been entered into. You can practice seeing this even before you are able to feel every detail from the saddle. Watch the horse from the side. Do not freeze the video on the most beautiful moment and argue with the screenshot. Watch the entire sequence. Just before the transition, what changes first? Does the horse make the neck shorten and lift the head up, as if he has to pull the front of the body out of trot? Does he increase the speed and then fall into canter? Or can you see the pelvis becoming more active before the front changes? Does the rotation behind create the wave that later appears in the neck? This is how a professional reads movement, not by judging the final outline, but by seeing cause and effect. Two horses can arrive in almost the same canter shape. One arrived there because the pelvis created the movement and the back transferred it. The other arrived there because the rider shortened the neck and the horse used speed. The photograph may look similar to an unexperienced eye. Let's say it like that. Imagine one horse preparing for the transition. The rider shortens the reins and adds leg. The neck becomes shorter. The head comes up. The horse speeds up and then jumps into canter. The hindquarters follow the front into the gait. The transition has happened, but the back did not transfer the movement correctly. It protected itself from it. Now imagine another horse approaching the transition from a very low energy. The rhythm remains quiet. The neck remains long. The pelvis stays relaxed and fully available. You feel something changing behind you before anything becomes bigger in front of you. The pelvis rotates, the movement travels through the back, the front lifts as a result. This transition may look smaller in the beginning. It may not impress the people in the arena who enjoy those dramatic movements and dramatic opinions in equal measure. But inside the horse, something completely different is happening. The horse is learning how to canter, not just how to get into canter, but how to canter. Many horses rush into the transition because speed can temporarily replace coordination. Momentum carries the body over the border between trot and canter. At low energy, the horse cannot use this solution. He has to remain inside the body. He has to feel the pelvis. He has to allow the back to stay long. He has to keep the neck available. And the transition has to grow out of the movement pattern we developed in walk and trot. And I have to tell you that there is also this more is more mistake, a trap that many people are unknowingly trapped within that mistake. And this is very often happening, that if transition looks spectacular, although still is messy, someone would think, oh, we need more of this, more repetitions of that enthusiasm, more of that energy. And all that happens then is that the horses become very good at doing these messy, expressive transitions with tons of enthusiasm. And don't get me wrong, the enthusiasm is good, but if it's built on shaky foundation, then it cannot lead to consistent and repetitive transformation. So when I finally ask such riders to ride a handful of transitions with almost embarrassingly low energy, they are a little bit uncomfortable psychologically, mentally, but you can suddenly see the exact moment that the pelvis then left the chat and the neck starts to take over. That was already happening within that fast, energetic, expressive transitions, but it was already covered by the enthusiasm and messiness, so it was harder to notice. When we slow down, then the rider and the horse have the very first time opportunity to realize how fewer, slower, better transitions are actually changing the body more than these impressive, messy, enthusiastic sets of firsts forward. So if your inner achiever is horrified right now, thinking, no, I don't want to do slow transitions because I want energy, I want forwardness, I want the horse to be quick on the leg, I understand it. But it's not possible to track when the movement pattern changes if you do everything very quickly. And this is when things normally fall apart. This is the moment when we slow down instead of rushing forward, when the body regains access and becomes practical again. If the horse loses access to his body just before the transition, he returns to the familiar pattern. He rushes, he contracts, he throws the head up. He may become confused or emotional because the force is getting bigger, and it's easy to confuse this bigger force or emotions for enthusiasm. But the truth is that many times the body does not know what to do with this bigger energy. So we never punish for this. We never push harder. We go back to the place where the horse can feel the body again. We restore relaxation. We restore length. We restore back to front connectedness. And then we approach the transition again. This can feel slow to people who only measure training by the number of completed Canter transitions and by how many of them their barn friends saw. But I am not interested in collecting Canter transitions. When educating my riders, when leading people and their horses through this transformation of the back functionality, I am interested only in creating the movement system that will make every future Canter transition better. And this is a very different investment. When biomechanically correct Canter begins to appear, the horse usually starts to enjoy it internally. There is no this big thrust of enthusiasm, but there is inner contentment, understanding the details, wanting to polish them, wanting to do them more correctly. The gait no longer feels like a muscular emergency. The transition doesn't feel anymore like urgency, but it's received, energy stored, redirected and returned. The horse no longer has to manufacture every stride from a new muscular effort, and the rider no longer feels that she has to personally organize every leg before breakfast, so to say, but the internal trampoline begins to work. The body feels lighter, not because the forces are smaller, but because the forces have somewhere to go now. This is the Canter that starts developing the top line. And now we can look at the back muscles themselves again. Because the horse moves on 4 legs, the top line muscles work in a very specific moments of the stride. They do not simply contract and remain contracted. They have to respond to the changing position of the legs, the rotation of the pelvis, the rise and fall of the center of gravity, and the force traveling through the body. At the correct moment, they activate, they organize and support. Then They release the elastic structures of the back and transfer the force happens through that back. In the next phase of the stride, the demand changes again. This changing work is exactly what develops a functional top line. The muscles are not being trained to hold one shape, they are being trained to manage entire movement cycle. They become stronger because the horse is asking them to receive, control, and transfer real force through the body. This is why biomechanically correct canter is so important. The pelvis creates a powerful rotation, the back has to carry that movement towards the front, the muscles must activate correctly without blocking the elastic structures underneath them. This is also why canter develops the top line in a way that simply asking the horse to use the back cannot. Lift your back is not a clear physical job for the muscles. It is more like motivational quote than a training plan, and we have to understand it correctly. Correct canter gives the system a changing physical task in every stride. Now it has to support the spine while the pelvis rotates. So the legs have to allow the length while force moves through the body. They have to join the movement in which energy is collected and then release enough for that energy to continue movement forward. This creates real functional demand. The muscles are not becoming bigger because we chase them directly, they are developing because the movement now requires their correct function. That is the difference between creating the appearance of a top line and building the physical capacity underneath that top line. If the canter is almost correct, but the back still shortens, in the transition, the mechanism changes. If the pelvis almost rotates correctly, but the neck lifts first, the mechanism changes. If the horse creates suspension through speed while the body remains connected, the mechanism changes. The horse may still look as if he is doing a good canter, but the top line does not care about that appearances. The body adapts to the forces it actually receives. This is also why true collection cannot be created by physically making the horse shorter. Collection is not a smaller shape or condensed shape. Collection is the horse becoming able to receive, store, control, and redirect bigger forces without losing relaxation, body awareness, or the elastic connection through the body. The horse becomes more collected because his movement system becomes more capable, not because the rider folds him into a smaller package or and hopes the physics will become more convenient. The sequence cannot be negotiated. It's relaxation, access to the pelvis, a long relaxed back, a long relaxed neck, tendon-based movement at the walk, the same organization for the tendon-based movement in trot, and then biomechanically correct canter from low energy transition. This is how the top line is being built, not by chasing it, but by creating the movement that needs it. And now we can quickly move to consider how the rider's body works within that system. So it's very important to understand that the top line is not a separate project sitting on top of the horse. And the horse and rider are not two separate movement systems that just share some momentum through the saddle. Every stride moves both bodies. If the rider's pelvis is gripping, closed, stiff, then the horse's movement meets another blockage. If the rider fixes her spine, the wave arriving through the horse has nowhere to continue. If the rider's hands try to organize the front of the horse before the pelvis has created the movement from behind, then the rider can interrupt the very mechanism she's asking the horse to produce. This is why I focus on body access for the rider as well. The rider has to feel what her own body is doing. She has to notice whether she can receive the movement or whether she's protecting herself from it. She has to be able to influence the horse without replacing his internal organization with her muscular effort. You and your horse are one movement system while you ride. This is often the missing piece when riders say, "My horse moves beautifully without me, but the moment I sit on him, the back disappears, it drops, it stops moving." The horse did not forget how to move in the time it took you to put your foot into the stirrup, but the system changed because another body entered it. The horse did not lose his top line in 0.3 seconds. He just received a slightly chaotic pre-made into the equation. This is not about blaming you as the rider. This is about access. Sometimes the rider feels the blockage first in the hand. The horse creates more force behind, but instead of receiving a bigger wave through the pelvis, the rider receives more pressure onto the bit in the reins. It is tempting to solve the problem where it becomes visible. The hand becomes stronger, the neck becomes shorter, the rider tries to make the front lighter, but the pressure in the hand may be the end of the problem, not the beginning, and very often it is so. The force was created behind. It reached the block back, so it could not continue through the long body and arrived therefore in the contact as pressure. If we correct only the pressure, we may close the road even more. The rider has to feel the direction in which the whole system is changing, not simply react to the body part that becomes more inconvenient. When both bodies have access, the rider can support the horse without blocking him. She can feel the pelvis begin the movement, she can allow the back to carry it, she can stay with the long neck instead of trying to manufacture the final frame with the hands. This is where riding becomes much more effortless. Not easy in the sense that no skill is required, effortless in the sense that effort is not longer replacing coordination. And this is what separates real education of the equestrian athlete, the horse, from exercise delivery. A horse professional has to see what is happening underneath the task. Did the horse gain more access to the body? Did the pelvis become more available? Did the back become longer and more able to receive force? Did the neck stay relaxed when the energy increased? Did the horse become more coordinated or simply more obedient inside the compensation? These questions change how you train. They also change how quickly you recognize when an exercise has stopped being useful. You do not keep repeating it because the plan said 4 more times. You do not assume that more repetition will eventually make the incorrect movement correct. You return to the missing access, you restore the movement system, and then the exercise becomes useful again. And remember, beyond the top line, there is always the horse's experience. This is how I want you to understand developing the top line. The top line is not a separate project. It is the visible expression of the whole horse becoming connected. The pelvis can rotate, the back can carry the force, the neck can balance it, the muscles can activate without becoming rigid. The elastic structures can store and return energy. The horse can remain aware of his body while the movement becomes more powerful. When all of this comes together in biomechanically correct canter, the top line muscles finally receive the work for which they were designed. This is why you can keep doing top line exercises for years and see very little change. And this is why one change in the movement pattern can suddenly transform everything. Guys, and I've seen it so many times, it still blows my mind away why not every single trainer knows it and why so very few people deliver it inside the training system they practice with their horses. This is really one of the most important things that I want to emphasize here, because it makes the back looks different instantly. The contact will feel different instantly. You as the rider will sit different instantly. The horse will become more willing to go forward, because forward no longer means pushing a disconnected body through space. Movement will begin to feel good again. And horses want to repeat movement that feels good. This is so obvious. Eventually, the horse begins to ask you for counter transition, not because he became more obedient, not because he waits for a treat, but because the movement has become pleasurable and the moment of transition became clean, predictable, composed. The internal trampoline lifts up the horse. The pelvis can rotate. The back no longer has to defend itself from that force. The neck no longer has to manufacture elevation that is not carried out from behind. The whole body begins to participate. This is functional strength. The horse is not strong because individual muscles look impressive. He's strong because his body is connected enough to use the forces it creates. And this is where the conversation goes deeper than the top line. Because when we give the horse access to his body, we are not only changing muscles, we are changing his experience of himself. A horse who has to contract, rush, or disconnect every time the forces become bigger cannot remain fully present inside the movement. Part of him is always escaping from what the body cannot organize. When the pelvis relaxes, the back opens and the force can finally travel. The horse does not have to leave himself in order to perform for you. He can remain inside his body. He can feel power without being overwhelmed by it. He can feel the rider without losing himself. For me, this is the deepest purpose of correct biomechanics. It is not about creating more impressive shape. It is about allowing the horse to inhibit more of himself. The body becomes more available. The movement becomes more conscious. The horse becomes capable of expressing power without replacing awareness with tension. This is why correct movement has a completely different quality when you see it. You do not just see a lifted back or better counter. You see the horse that is there. The movement that is not happening to the horse, but it's coming through the horse. This is the spiritual part of this work for me. Not something added on top of biomechanics. Not only a mere new exercise set to do in your arena, to the moving meat that your horse eventually will turn into if you train him only through the principles of exercises. It is what appears when biomechanics stop working against the consciousness inside the body. The horse becomes more physically connected and at the same time more present mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Power and relaxation stop being opposites. Strength and sensitivity stop being opposites. The horse does not have to become less of himself to become more trainable. He becomes more accessible because he has more access to himself. And for me, this changes the ethical meaning of the training. We are no longer asking how much performance we can obtain from a body that remains disconnected. We are asking how much more of the horse can become present inside the performance. Can his awareness stay with the pelvis as it rotates? Can he remain relaxed while the forces become bigger? Can he keep feeling the rider without contracting the body to protect himself? This is not softness instead of strength. It is softness as the condition for strength. It is not spirituality instead of biomechanics. It is consciousness gaining access to the biomechanics of the body. So before you search for that next top-line exercise set, pause and look underneath that very exercise set. Where does the movement begin? Does the pelvis rotate first? Can the long relaxed back transfer the force forward? Does the long neck balance the movement, or does the horse lift and contract the neck to manufacture the appearance of elevation? Can the horse stay aware of his body as the force becomes bigger? Because you cannot exercise a horse into a functional top line while repeating the movement pattern that prevents the top line from functioning. If you recognized your own horse while listening to that, if you suddenly see why the back remains weak despite all the work you have done, you do not need a better collection of exercises. You need to change the movement system underneath them. This work is for the trainers who are no longer satisfied just because the horse completed the task. It is for the trainer who wants to know what the horse's body practiced, whether the movement created more access or more compensation, and whether the horse became more connected to himself through the training. If you are ready to stop manufacturing the appearance of a stronger back and instead give your horse access to the movement from which a functional top line can emerge, this is exactly what I teach inside the Weak Back program. We do not chase the shape of the top line there. I teach you how to recognize the movement pattern your horse is using, how to create body access and conscious relaxation, and how to build the progression from walk through trot into biomechanically correct canter. And if, as a side effect, your arena slowly stops looking like an equestrian IKEA showroom and starts looking like a quiet place where real athletes are built, I will be very happy for both of you. Because once the movement system changes, the top line is no longer something you try to place on the horse. It becomes something the horse finally can reveal.